Hey, this is Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with some more adventuring and locksmithing. Um, I've been had kind of a bit of a break there for a little bit. Had to work real crazy. Of course, by the time you see this video, that break will have come and gone because I had a bunch of videos already recorded. But that's just how crazy I was. Is the uploading and making thumbnails for them and all that. I just did not have the time. But I had left off. I was in the middle of my nightmare cars, and these aren't nightmare cars as in difficult, but nightmare cars and like the real dirty stuff like that. And I kind of had between when I started that all happened, those 6 cars in one day. I've had a few cars since then, so I figured I'd just continue this series on. This one, a Kia Sportage. Now, this was one. And this was actually more because of difficulty. So the car looked kind of older, but it was clean, but it didn't look in good shape. And I took apart, made the key, and it didn't turn in the ignition. All the cuts are in the door that are in the ignition, so the key I made from the door lock. So I asked the guy, because I asked him ahead of time, "Are you sure the key that worked the door worked the ignition?" He says, "Yes, I'm positive." So I'm trying. I'm finally like, you know what? I have a good amount of time before my next appointment. Instead of walking away from this job with no money, looking like I'm not a skilled locksmith, I'm going to go ahead and just pull this ignition. It's a roll pin. It's got 4 roll pins that hold this ignition. Most ignitions have 1 roll pin, or 2, or 3 at the most. But this has got roll pins every which way, all the way around it. So I gotta get out the shear head bolts, knock those loose, get those loose, pull the ignition down, and it's got hidden screws holding it on everywhere. So it was a bear to get out. Finally get it out, get it apart. Turns out the last cut is double width. So if I had just dragged the last cut depth all the way to the end of the key, it would have worked. But the spacing is different in the ignition than it is in the door lock for that last cut. And my book didn't have a note about that. So I had the right key, I just didn't know I needed to drag that. And so I put about an hour's worth of labor into something that, probably if I'd bought a different brand book, there might have been a note in that one. I'm sure there's a note somewhere in certain locksmith stuff, but in my book, there wasn't a note. And sure enough, I looked it up online afterwards, and there were notes about it. And it was just one of those things that was frustrating thing. Now, this is probably the first and only Kia Sportage I've ever done. They're not that common of a car, and I'm not in that big of a city, so I may never run into another one again, and I'll probably forget if I do. So I wrote a little note in my book. Hopefully I remember when I buy a new book to transfer that over. But this is just some of the things that sometimes you run into these things. So it took me twice as long. I charged the guy exactly what I originally told him because it was on me. It was not on him. There was nothing. It was the car as he promised it. So sometimes you just got to eat that. So this turned out to be a nightmare job when just a little blurb of text would have prevented that. But that's part of being a locksmith. And so I can continue on. I have 2 more that I can add that came from today, and add those on there for some more adventures in locksmithing, looking at some of my nightmare or headache cars that I get. Alright, I'll catch you in the next video. Have a good day.